So you see them around. They actually get paid pretty well. It's like $15 an hour to just sit there on a street corner, kind of dance around a bit and spin this sign. And you listen to your own music. They don't give you music to dance to. You kind of pick it out. You're crunking with the sign. No one can read it. I remember I've done a lot of odd jobs in my life, and I don't necessarily mean that as a turn of phrase. I've worked at a crematory for a while. I've been a nanny. I've done all sorts of crazy jobs. Those two jobs weren't back to back, but I've had all sorts of crazy small jobs in my life. I worked for a psychic phone network for a while. That was a depressing job. I'll tell that story someday. But I remember once I was like, I could dance around for $15 an hour, and there was an ad in the newspaper for dancing guy on street corner, and I was like, I can do that. It's $15 an hour, And this was back like in '98, so $15 was a lot of money back then. But anyway, so I remember calling them up, and they said, well, here's the thing. What we need you to do first, you need to prove your mettle. And I'm like, dance competition? And they're like, well, no, not a dance competition. They go, what we're going to have you do is you're going to put up, it was for a real estate company. They'll go all along this main route. It was Hazel Avenue in Orangevale, Citrus Heights, Sacramento area. But it was in Orangevale, down Hazel. You're going to put these signs up for this new real estate development, and each Friday night I had to put them up. And by Sunday afternoon, I had to take them down. Otherwise, they got fined because they weren't allowed to advertise during the week. It was actually the only job I ever got fired from because I couldn't, I never took the signs down. I'd always leave like one or two signs up, I'd miss them, and they'd end up getting fined. But I remember the guy came to give me my supplies. He gave me a sledgehammer and a bunch of wooden stakes, and I was like, okay, this is cool because whether or not the job is any fun, I can at least fight vampires. And I remember him telling me, he goes, listen, kid. Because I was probably like 19. He goes, listen, kid. He might not have said kid, but anyways, he's like chomping a cigar. He's like, listen, kid. You got this job. You're going to put these signs up on Friday nights. You're going to take them down on Sunday afternoons. And if you do a good job, quote, he actually said this, if you do a good job, someday you'll be that guy dancing on the street corner. And I'm thinking, I'm beneath him? I'm beneath the Mr. Pickles guy? Like, I was a rung below him. And I ended up getting fired from that job. But so there was also this field it was off of Hazel Avenue. There's this large field, and we had gone there, me and my friends had gone there a couple times ghost hunting, because it was creepy. We had seen some shadow men there. I had seen a shadow man there, and I have a unique experience. Well, here, I'll tell this Shadow Man story here. So me and my friends rolled up to this field, because it sets the tone for this area. It looked like when you stood on the edge of the field. It was right off of Hazel, if you know the area, but near Gold River. But anyways, when you stood on the edge of the field, it looked like the field went on it looked like it went on forever. It didn't, obviously, but in the middle of the suburban area, there was just this large field that had never been developed. I remember once I rolled up there with my friends, and I said, we all get out of our car, we're walking around, and there was this one guy who's like, I don't believe in ghosts, and back then I was like, totally believed in ghosts, every ghost story was true, all that stuff. We rolled up to this field, and I was like, yeah, this place is pretty creepy, and the dude who didn't believe in anything, he was standing there with his girlfriend, and we had probably like 6-7 people with us. I think we took a couple cars, and dude was standing there on the edge of the field, and I saw a shadow person. Okay, and let me say this too. Of course, all these stories you take with a grain of salt. Like, they did happen. They're 100% true. But if you don't believe them, that's fine. Because again, it's just one person telling a story to you. And I have nothing to back it up. But anyway, so I was standing there, and this dude who didn't believe in ghosts or nothing like that, he was just walking around, standing there with his girlfriend. And we're just kind of milling about, and I see a shadow person standing right behind him. Now, I'm walking, the dude's name was Chris. I'm walking up basically behind Chris. He's looking in one direction, and I see the shadow person standing behind him. And it was one of those weird things where I remember the shadow person almost having color in it. It's such a bizarre thing. But I couldn't describe it. It basically was a shadow-shaped human, but there was a little bit of color. It was so bizarre. And I walked up and I didn't tell Chris what was going on. I didn't tell him what I saw anything. I was like, don't move. There's a spooky ghost. None of that stuff. I just walked up behind him. And I'm now maybe 1.5 feet, 2 feet behind Chris. And again, he's not aware of what I'm doing. And I put my hands where the shadow person was. And didn't tell anyone what I was doing. I just kind of walked up to behind Chris. And again, there's still a foot between me and Chris. I put, maybe even further, maybe 2 or 3 feet. I put my hands up to where the shadow person was, and when I did, Chris's knees buckled, Like, I saw him physically kind of like buckle down. And again, I didn't tell him anything that I was doing. And he turned around and he's like, what happened? And I was like, there was something behind you. And I walked up to it and I touched it. And he goes, I don't like this, man. I don't like this. And we hung out there for, we were there for maybe just a few more minutes. And he's like, I don't like this at all. And the plan was then to go to, I think it wasn't Sherry's, Caro's at the time. So we drive back down Hazel, go to Caro's. We all pull into the parking lot because we had multiple vehicles. And we get out, and Chris and his girlfriend at the time, and they're like, we're out. And I'm like, what's the matter? He's like, I don't feel good, dude. I don't feel good. And he just left. And it was a weird experience. And that wasn't the only experience we had at that field. A lot of times you would just get an eerie sense, or you would hear something moving around in the trees, which that could just be wildlife. But that shadow person standing behind him was always kind of a weird. I knew then that particular area was haunted. And so these two stories collide. So at one point, I had my sledgehammer. I was out in that area because it was right off the road where I'd put the signs up. And one day I was rolling with my boys, and I had my little brother there as well. So I had two of my friends who weren't there for the shadow people stuff. It was two other friends that I went ghost hunting with because I did it a lot in my 20s. I was there with them and my little brother. We pull up to that field. And while we're there and we're like looking for ghosts, a car full of high schoolers showed up. Now, I don't want to oversell it, but Orangevale and Citrus Heights may have calmed down a bit, but Orangevale has always been basically, even though it's part of a large city, it's a suburb of a suburb. You get in fights, really. I got in a lot of fights. Back then, and you would just get in fights with people. And you would just have to, basically, whenever you went out, you're like, there's a chance that I'm going to get in a fight tonight. It was just something that you had to deal with. So these high schoolers rolled up, looking for a fight. I'm standing there with my friends. We're all like, hey, let's go find ghosts. Maybe I could get an EVP. But we would still, like, beat the shit out of people. Like, you just, again, it didn't matter what clique you ran with. You had to be prepared to fight. And so anyways, this car full of high school students roll up, and they're like, hey, what are you guys doing? They're just, like, talking trash, right? I'm not trying to be, like, a tough guy or nothing. I had my boys with me. It wasn't like, I don't feel like I'm trying to make myself to be out some sort of badass, but these dudes roll up, and they're talking trash, and I'm just kind of letting them talk trash, you know? They're because I'm holding a sledgehammer. And the sledgehammer that I got was like it was like a miniature sledgehammer. So it was probably about 3 feet long, because it was just for driving wooden stakes, and it wasn't a full, giant, long sledgehammer. But they roll up, and I have it kind of down at my waist, and the car doesn't see it, because it's nighttime. They're talking trash, and I'm like, yeah, And when I decide to make my move, I just raise the sledgehammer. I'm like, get out of your car, dude. And the car, obviously, they take off. Because they're like, no matter what, if we think we could take this guy in a fist fight, he has a sledgehammer. And again, not telling that story because I'm some sort of badass, because I'm not, but I'm telling that story because of what happened next. So we're out there for longer because we're not going to let these guys ruin our night. We had a whole night of ghost hunting planned, and we had a bunch of weird stuff happen that night. But this particular thing is this particular story. So we're out there for a bit longer, and I was like, hey, dude, I gotta piss, dude. I'm gonna go behind this building. It was basically like the big field, but then if you walked a block, there was like this little mini mall type of thing. But it had like auto repair shop and stuff like that. But for some reason, we left. I think I didn't want to piss in the haunted field. So I go over around the corner. We drive the car a bit. I jump out. I go around the corner, and I start peeing. As I'm still peeing. So it's hanging out, urinating all over this person's business. My brother and my two friends come running around the corner, and I'm like, "Yo, dude, what the hell, dude? I got my dick out. Like, what are you guys doing?" And they all look at each other and they go, "Were you just screaming?" And I was like, "No." And they're like, "We just heard you screaming, dude. You were just screaming for help, like at the top of your lungs." And my little brother's like, "We thought that car circled back around." And they all jumped out, and you guys were fighting. And I was like, "No, dude, look, I'm pissing. There's nobody around me." And all three of them were like, "Dude, we all heard you scream for help. Like, as loud as you could." And you can imagine, I think, if you listen to this podcast, how loud it gets. Sometimes I have to gate the audio. But me and these guys, I was like, I had to zip up. But I was like, no, I wasn't screaming. And they're like, "Dude, we 100% heard you screaming for your life." And I thought about it. As we were driving around, I thought, and these guys, we had all done ghost hunting together. And we had a rule, and this is a rule I generally have with ghost hunting. No pranks. No jokes. Like, if we're out in a location, don't go, I just forgot I left my oven on. None of that, because it totally defeats the purpose. When you went out with me to do this type of stuff, no jokes, no jumping out scaring people, no saying you saw stuff when you didn't see stuff. That was our rule. And especially my little brother wouldn't have been on it, because he was new to kind of hanging out with us. He would have said, nah, let's not do that. So I trust him 100% when they said that they actually thought they heard me yelling. And I thought about it, and we all kind of talked about it throughout the night. We did more ghost hunting and stuff, but the fact that... so something imitated my voice. Something said, screaming at the top of my lungs, while I was completely silent. And again, I would never pull a prank on them like that. So we have an experience where a ghost is able to mimic the voice of a person and say new phrases. It's not simply that you walk in a haunted house and you go, is anyone here? And you hear back, is anyone here? Which would be creepy enough, obviously. But it wasn't an echo. It was new thoughts and new ideas in my voice, getting those people to my area. Now, here's the creepy thing about that. There's always that idea, like, let's say that you're out ghost hunting. You trust the people you're with. You should, at least. And something gathers you all in one spot. You hear someone crying out for help, and everyone goes to a particular spot, and they're like, I swore I heard Jason in the middle of the woods. And everyone goes there, and that's where that force, that darkness wants you at that moment. Or, even creepier, it spreads you out. So one person hears my voice over here, my little brother hears my voice over here, and my third friend hears my voice over here, and they start going, he's over here, he's over here. No, I swear it's coming from over here, and the group starts to spread out. Very chilling. I've never run into that. Now, I didn't hear it myself, but again, it's interesting to think that something could imitate you and basically lay a trap. But the second story I'm going to tell is far more troubling. I had a friend that was also into the paranormal. I think she went on a couple ghost hunts with us, but she wasn't one of the regulars. And her name was Dana, and she was a good friend of mine. And she had a pet cockatoo, which is a bird that talked. I forgot what the name of it was. It was super vicious, dude. It would chase you around the house. It would bite you. It was nuts. It was absolutely nuts. But, it was her pet, so what are you going to do? And we hung out a lot, and we stayed up talking and things like that. No big deal. I spent the night at her house a couple times, but it was total just friend thing. And so I remember one night, the reason why I would stay the night at her house, because her house, she claimed multiple times, my house is haunted. My house is haunted. You should stay the night, my house is haunted. And so I stayed the night at her house a couple times. And again, we would just stay up talking, and then we would go to sleep. I would sleep on the couch, and she had a bedroom upstairs with her bird. Not the bird wasn't in the bed, but, she shared a bedroom with her bird, who I forgot the name of. I feel bad. I wonder if he's still alive, because I know birds live a long time. But anyways, I remember one night, and again, I was really into ghost hunting and really into looking up magical rituals online and just getting in over my head. Both of these stories happened around the time of the Shadow People invasion that I was talking about, where I was just seeing more stuff than I wanted to. My curiosity was more than piqued, and it was just, I was seeing it everywhere. So, one night, I'm downstairs. She's upstairs. And her mom also thought that... Oh, and here's an interesting story about her mom, too. I should tell this story just because it's so bizarre. She said, my mom had a childhood sweetheart, and they were in high school together. And he wanted to marry her when they graduated. He goes, I want to marry you, but the first thing I want to do is I want to hitchhike across the United States. And we're talking, this is back in the year 1971. He said, I want to hitchhike across the United States. I want to have this great adventure. And when I come back, I want to settle down and marry you. And she's like, that sounds fine. He sounds like this rough and tumble guy. He just disappeared. The family never knew what happened to him. Dana's mom never heard from him again. He just vanished. Just gone. So maybe he found a new life somewhere, or who knows? He just disappeared. And of course, 70s and 80s was kind of the height of the serial killer, especially the roaming serial killer, so it's always kind of a creepy story. But anyway, so one night, Dana would talk about her house